Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to be covering the entire book of Enoch, which is about 108 chapters. One thing I do want to say is that the book of Enoch is non-canonical, meaning in Christian canon in mainstream Christianity, this did not happen. Now, in the Bible, there is a man that went by the name of Enoch. When the Genesis genealogy happens, for those who do not know what the Genesis genealogy is, it is a long list, practically like a genealogy. So it's like a family tree, kind of, pretty much. But it says the name of someone, the age they were when they fathered their kid, and the age they were when they died. When it gets to Enoch, it says that Enoch was no more because God took him. The book of Enoch tells us where God took Enoch and what he saw. Now, the book of Enoch is split up into 5 sections or 5 books. The first section / book is called the Book of Watchers. The second is called the Book of Parables. The third is called the Book of Astronomy. The fourth is called the Book of Dreams. And the fifth is called the Epistle of Enoch. But yeah, before we get into the video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because these videos actually take a really long time to make, and you'd be doing me the biggest favor if you actually did do those things. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. We're going to start off with the first section, the Book of Watchers. So, in the book of Enoch, Enoch is described as being a righteous man, and he has a vision. In this vision, he sees the Holy One being God. Angels show him this vision, and the vision is not for his generation, but for the future generations that are to come. Enoch then blesses the elect and the righteous. From what we can gather, these are basically going to be the people that are going to stay faithful when the wicked are judged, or when judgment comes, or while the wicked are being removed. It is described that God is going to tread on the earth, specifically Mount Sinai, and he will show strength from the heaven of heavens. It then describes that everybody will be struck with fear. The watchers, who are the fallen angels, will quake, and fear and trembling will be spread throughout the ends of the earth. It then describes that high mountains will shake and high hills will be low. It also describes that mountains and hills will melt like wax before fire, and the earth will be split open, and everybody on the earth will perish. It then goes on to describe that God will execute judgment on all humans, and that the ungodly will be destroyed, and all flesh will be convicted of their sins, including evil actions and words, or evil words and action. And that God is going to make peace with the righteous and the elect, and they will receive blessings, protection, mercy, and prosperity. And that God will guide them, and his light will appear to them also. It then describes that God is going to come with 10,000 holy ones. These are angels, and the purpose of this is to destroy the ungodly and to convict all humans of their evil deeds. Enoch then tells the reader or the listener to observe the heavenly bodies, so like the stars, the sun, the moon, or the sun, the moon, the stars, and they did not change their orbit, and that every luminary or light or celestial body rised and set in perfect order, and that each moved according to its season, not disobeying its path. Enoch then commanded the people to observe the earth and to notice how stable it was, and that the earth and its process stayed consistent, and that the earth showed the works and order of God, and that nothing happened randomly, but it was all a part of God's designed system. And to look at summer and winter, and that it was set in rhythm, and that water filled the earth through stuff like dew, clouds, rain, and that this cycle showed God's faithfulness and control. Or the cycles showed God's faithfulness and control. Yeah. Enoch then tells the people to observe the trees in the winter, and that they lost their leaves during this season, and that death and dormancy, or this symbolizes death and dormancy in pause in the cycle of nature. This symbolizes death and dormancy in nature, a pause in cycle, or a pause in life cycle. It then goes on to describe 14 trees, and that during the winter they did not lose their leaves, and that they retained their foliage for 2 to 3 years, and that even though all other trees seemed dead or withered, or they lost their leaves, these trees remained green and alive. Enoch then tells the people to observe the days of the sun, and that the sun was directly above the earth, and it was shining directly upon the earth, and that the heat of the sun was both intense and constant. And that because of this great heat, people wanted to seek shelter and shade for relief, and that the heat was so strong to the point where it would make the ground and rocks too hot to walk on. Enoch then tells the people to observe the trees and to notice how they bared fruit and grew leaves, and that this was a part of God's design and care for creation, and that people are to be encouraged to acknowledge God's role. It then describes that God's work repeated year after year without fail, and that everything happened according to God's ordained plan, and that nothing in creation stopped its task or work unexpectedly. Or nothing in creation stopped its task or purpose unexpectedly. It then describes that the sea and rivers followed God's command, and the movements and cycles do not change, and they do exactly what God intended them to do. It then describes that humans have not been consistent and ignored God's words, and that they have spoken up against God, and that there will be no mercy for the hard-hearted. It then describes that the wicked will curse their own days, years of life wasted, and their destruction will increase eternally, and they will be shown no mercy. The wicked will be destroyed, or the ungodly will be destroyed, while the righteous rejoice. And that they will be shown no mercy, and that the ungodly will be destroyed, while the righteous rejoice. It then describes that the elect will receive a various amount of blessings, and that they will inherit the earth. They will also receive wisdom, and that they will sin no more, either through ungodliness or pride. It describes them living peaceful lives, being humble and safe from divine anger. Okay, now that we got that all out of the way, it's about to get juicy. It describes that humankind, or humans, were multiplying, and that from these humans came beautiful and attractive daughters. Some angels, called the children of heaven, see these women and lust after them, and then they decide among themselves, let's choose wives from among human women and have children with them. Semjaza, the leader of this group, was afraid that if they went through with this plan, he was afraid that some of them were going to back out and they were going to leave him dealing with the punishment of this great sin. The angels then swore a oath, a curse among themselves. The curse was like imprecation. Yeah. It then describes that they went to Earth on the day of Jared, or during the day of Jared. For those who do not know who Jared is, he's the great-grandfather of Enoch. They land on Mount Hermon, and they name it that because, and I quote, they had sworn and bound themselves by an oath. It then gives the names of these angels. I'm going to read them to you to the best of my capability. Semyaza, Arakabal, Ramil, Kokabel, Tamlel, Ramlel, Danel, Ezekiel, Berakwijal, Aziel, Aramaros, Baterel, Ananel, Zaquael, Zamsakpil, Zatarel, Turel, Jomjael, and Zariel, or Sariel. The 200 angels that did this, it describes that each of them took a wife and they had sexual relations with them, and they committed something called defilement, from what we know is a great sin. The angels then would go on to teach them supernatural and occult skills, including charms, which is magical spells, enchantments, which is sorcery, root cutting is a plant-based magic or early witchcraft, and properties of plants, possibly herbalism, or, used for magic or altering the body. This knowledge was forbidden. Humans were never supposed to have this. Which, I don't know. I feel like the concept of that is really cool. Like, a lot of people have the question of, like, how did we get this? Or how did, as humankind, did we come out to find that? Like, how do we know that? And, like, that's such a cool idea that angels came down and told us things we were never supposed to know. That's cool. I don't know about you. That's cool. These women then became pregnant by the angels, and they birthed something called Nephilim. It describes that they were massive giants, and that they were the height of 3,000 ells, which is just symbolization from how massive they were. These giants are described as being massive, powerful, and destructive. It is described that the giants would eat the food that the humans would produce, and when the humans did not produce any food or there was no food left, the giants would eat the humans. It then describes that the giants sinned against the birds, the beasts, the reptiles, and the fish, which can imply some genetic corruption. It is then described that they started committing acts of cannibalism and they started eating each other. They also drank blood, which, from what we know about God's law, is a big no-no. Can't do that. It's then described that because of the destruction that is going on earth, the earth itself accuses the wicked and demands justice. One of the angels, Azazel, teaches humanity a plethora of forbidden knowledge. This dude taught them a lot. Okay, so Azazel is one of the fallen angels, and he teaches humanity things they were never supposed to know. So, I'm about to read to you all the stuff he taught them that they were never supposed to know. So, how to make weapons, swords, knives, armor, breastplates, how to work with metals, mining, forging, shaping, how to make bracelets, ornaments, and jewelry, and the use of antimony, a black mineral used as makeup, how to beautify the eyes, so like early cosmetics, the use of precious stones and coloring dyes. These teachings led to vanity, lust, violence, and pride. As a result, godlessness increases, people become corrupt, and fornication spreads. Also, from what we can gather, or kind of like from what we know, each angel or each fallen angel taught a specific art or forbidden knowledge that humans were not supposed to know. Like, for example, Semyaza, he taught enchantments and root cutting, so basically like magic and witchcraft. Aramaros, how to undo or reverse enchantments, so like counter sorcery. Bara Kwijal, he taught astrology, so like reading the stars to predict events. Kokabel, knowledge of constellations. Ezekiel, understanding of clouds, so like weather signs. Eraquiel, signs of the earth, possibly geology or divination through the land. Shamsiel, signs of the moon, so like solar omens or solar worship. Sariel, course of the moon, lunar cycles, likely early lunar calendar or magic. It then describes that humanity was becoming deeply corrupted, and the sins that they were practicing of that time spread throughout earth, and people started calling out to the heavens for justice. It then describes the 4 holy archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. They're kind of looking down from heaven and they're seeing all the chaos that's happening. It then describes that the earth itself is crying out, and that the people who died, the people who are died, or the humans who are now dead, are pleading before the angels, and they ask the angels to bring their case before the Most High. So they're saying that they want God to step in and intervene and stop all this madness. The 4 holy archangels then plead before God, but they address God with reverence. So they call him stuff like King of Kings, Lord of Lords, God of Gods, God of the Ages. Even though God already knows what has already happened, or he knows events before they're about to occur, the 4 holy archangels then give him a report of what the fallen angels are doing. So he's like, or they are like, so everything we've been talking about up until this point is what he told them, or what they tell God. So they're like, Azazel has taught them forbidden knowledge they were not supposed to know. Semyaza has abused his authority, their leader. They have been having sexual relations with the women there, the human women, and that their offspring, Nephilim, are causing destruction. It then describes that the humans that were killed in this process cry out to the heavens demanding justice. The angels then remind God that he knows events are going to happen before they even occur. So now the angels are just like, hey, you knew this was going to happen before it happened. So what are we going to do? What should we do? They then await God's commandment, or what? Basically, they wait on God to tell them what to do. I tried making it sound fancy, like they awaited God's commandments to figure out what to do. Like, no, they just waited for God to tell them what to do. That's what was happening. But yeah, they were waiting for God to tell them what to do for the chaos that was happening on earth. God, upon hearing the angels, gives the angels instructions and commands on what to do next. He then tells Uriel, one of the 4 archangels, that Uriel is to find a man that went by the name of Noah, the son of Lamech. Uriel then tells Noah that a great deluge is going to happen, the great flood, and this punishment or this thing is going to wipe out everybody on earth, and that God is going to preserve humanity through Noah's line, so humanity can continue after this judgment. God then tells Raphael, again, one of the 4 archangels, to go and deal with the worst offender, Azazel. He then tells Raphael to take Azazel, bind his hands and feet, and to throw him in a pit in the desert called Dudael, and to cover him with jagged rocks and darkness so that he can never see the light again, and that he is going to be set free when Judgment Day happens, and then he is going to be casted into fire. God then tells Raphael to heal the earth. God is basically telling Raphael to cleanse the earth of the forbidden teachings that Azazel taught humanity, or that Azazel corrupted humanity with, or that Azazel corrupted it with. Basically, the forbidden knowledge that ruined mankind. God then sends Gabriel, one of the 4 archangels, to make the Nephilim fight amongst each other. When the Nephilim would do this, they would destroy each other. It then describes that the giants' fathers, or the fallen angels, are going to beg for mercy, but God is not going to grant that request, and that the giants thought that they were going to live forever, but God ended their time permanently. God then tells Michael, one of the 4 archangels, to deal with Semyaza and his followers. How Michael was going to do this is he was going to bind Semyaza and his followers and throw them into the valleys of the earth. After Michael was done doing this, they are going to be held there for 70 generations until Judgment Day. After Judgment Day or when it happens, they will be thrown into the abyss of fire. God then goes on to say, destroy all the spirits of the reprobate and the children of the watchers, because they have wronged mankind. After the destruction, God says that there is going to be a rebirth and that all evil and sin will be removed and a plant of righteousness and truth will appear and that humanity will live in peace. Yeah. It then describes the new world and how it will flourish. So the soil will produce 1,000 times its normal yield. The vineyards will overflow with wine. Olive trees will pour out oil abundantly. And the world will be free from oppression, sin, and godlessness. And then it talks about the eternal peace. So God declares the end result. All humans will become righteous. Every nation will worship God. The earth will be cleansed forever. No more sin, punishment, or torment. God then promises, I will never again send such destruction upon the earth from generation to generation forever. After this judgment, God is going to release the heavenly blessings that were stored up. So stuff like rain, growth, abundance, fertility, and that truth and peace will be associated with each other forever. And then it describes that before any of these events occurred, Enoch just disappeared from the face of the earth. Like nowhere, like they didn't know where he was, and he wasn't among the people. He just dipped. So in the biblical canon, in the book of Genesis, it says that Enoch was no more because God took him. But in the perspective of the book of Enoch, the reason why Enoch disappeared from the face of the earth is described as God took him and Enoch lived among the angels. When Enoch was blessing and worshiping God, the fallen angels, the watchers, the ones that we have been talking about, call out to him. They would call him Enoch, the scribe of righteousness, because at this time, Enoch was known for writing things down truthfully and divine wisdom faithfully. The Watchers wanted Enoch to talk to them, but not on their behalf this time. Enoch is to deliver a judgment message from God. God then declares that because of their rebellion, they will have no peace, their sins will never be forgiven, they will witness the death of their own children, the giants or the Nephilim, and they will mourn forever, but mercy will never come to them. In this chapter, Enoch confronts Azazel, or if I'm saying his name right. For those who do not know who Azazel is, he was the angel who taught humanity a forbidden amount of human knowledge, or just forbidden knowledge in general. Basically taught them things that they were never supposed to know. So Enoch basically tells Azazel, yo fam, you're cooked. He tells Azazel that he is going to remain bound and his prayers and requests are not going to be heard. The reason being is because Azazel taught humanity forbidden knowledge, things that they were never supposed to know, and in doing so, it deeply corrupted them, and if anything, it just made them sin even more. Enoch then goes to the rest of the fallen angels. It describes that they were terrified upon seeing Enoch, and they wanted Enoch to write a petition for them. Basically, a letter of prayer asking God for forgiveness and mercy. They can no longer do the following: speak directly to God, lift their eyes to heaven, approach his throne, and their shame and guilt have completely silenced them. Enoch then agrees to write a petition for them. In this petition, he describes their names, their deeds, and their desperate pleas for mercy. Enoch plans to present this petition before God. Enoch then travels to the waters of Dan near Mount Hermon. This is where the angels first descended. It is described that when Enoch was reading the petition, he fell asleep. It's described that Enoch, while he fell asleep, or while he is asleep, you know how sleep works, he has a prophetic dream. And in this dream, he sees a lot of punishment and judgment, and then he hears a heavenly voice telling him to go back to the fallen angels and rebuke them hard. Enoch, when he wakes up, he goes and he finds the fallen angels, and they are at a place called Abel-Zajel. Enoch finds the fallen angels. It is described that the fallen angels are crying with their face covered, and Enoch then tells them everything he saw in his dream, so like their doom, God's judgment, and their loss of power. Enoch begins by saying that this chapter records the words of the righteous, or God's reprimand of the fallen watchers, or of the fallen angels. God himself gave Enoch the ability to understand wisdom and rebuke the watchers, but the message he received in his vision is final. Your petition is denied forever. You will never again ascend to heaven. You will be bound to the earth until Judgment Day. After receiving this divine revelation, Enoch has a powerful vision. He describes being carried into heaven by supernatural causes. So clouds invite him, mist summons him, lightning and stars speed him upward, and wind lifts him higher. It then describes that Enoch approached a great wall that was made of crystal, and it was glowing and surrounded by tongues of fire. He's terrified but presses on. Inside, he finds a massive crystal palace. The walls and floor are made of shining gems. The ceiling glows like stars and lightning. Fiery cherubim, angelic beings, move within it. It then described that the whole place is surrounded by like blazing fire, and Enoch described that it was both hot and cold. Overwhelmed by this, Enoch falls face flat on the ground, overwhelmed by fear. Then he sees another house. Yeah, it's described that it was bigger and the entrance was wide open and that it was made of fire. And it was so glorious that Enoch could not describe it. The floor blazes like fire, lightning and stars flash above, even the ceiling burns with flame. In the center stands a lofty throne shining like crystal and sunlight. Beneath it are wheels of fire like in Ezekiel's vision. Streams of flaming fire flow from under the throne, and on the throne sits the great glory, God himself. His clothes shine brighter than the sun, whiter than snow. No angel or fleshy being can even look upon him. His radiance is too powerful, and around him are countless angels, 10,000 times 10,000. Yet, God needs no counselor or advisor. He reigns alone, and the holy ones near him never depart, constantly worshiping. Mind you, while all of this is happening, Enoch is still lying down on the ground, face flat. And it describes that he couldn't get to God by himself. An angel had to help him get to God. And when he got to God, it is described that Enoch bowed deeply before God. It then describes that God spoke kindly to Enoch and that Enoch was righteous, and he had a message that he wanted Enoch to deliver to the fallen angels, the ones that asked Enoch to pray for them. God basically tells the angels, the fallen angels, that they were supposed to help humanity, not the other way around. They flipped it. God then says that they left heaven, a eternal place, to go sleep with human women, and that them having children or offspring with them corrupted their heavenly nature. God then says that he gave humans wives so they could reproduce, so humanity could reproduce. But angels are not supposed to reproduce with humans, and also that they were immortal and they weren't supposed to do that. God then reveals that the dead giants, or the offspring of the fallen angels, the Nephilim, are going to be dead, but their evil spirits are still going to be around, and that they were from both heaven and earth, but they would never fully belong to either one. And from the perspective of the book of Enoch, this is how the origins of demons, this is how demons came to be. It is then described that they're going to cause a vast amount of suffering. They never eat or drink, yet they're never fully satisfied. As described, the dead giants, or the evil spirits, or the evil spirits of the dead giants, are going to cause a vast amount of suffering until Judgment Day. It is then described that the Watchers, or the fallen angels, and the wicked are going to face complete destruction. When the time comes, they will face complete destruction. God then tells Enoch, okay, so you know those angels that begged you to pray for them? Here's what you're going to tell them. God then starts off by telling them that they thought they knew everything, but they didn't. And instead of using their divine wisdom for good, they used it for evil, and they taught humanity things that they were never supposed to know. And in doing so, humanity used these dark secrets and used them to commit evil. To refresh you on the things that God is talking about, here are some examples. So the examples of these quote-unquote mysteries from earlier in Enoch include metalworking for war, weapons, magic and enchantments, astrology and spirit summoning, beauty manipulation, so like makeup and jewelry. God ends by saying they will have no peace. So from what we can interpret, this is like the end of the road for them. It's not going to get better anytime soon. It is then described that Enoch was escorted by heavenly angels that were made of fire, and they could appear as men if needed. The angels then bring Enoch to a massive dark mountain, and the mountain was so tall that it touched the heavens itself. Feel free to interpret that as you wish. Enoch is then shown the storehouse. This is basically where God keeps his cosmic weapons. So like thunder, stars, lightning, fiery bows, arrows, and swords. Enoch is then shown two powerful natural realms, the living waters and the fire of the west. Enoch then sees a river of fire. It's described that it flowed like water, but it was an ocean of fire. It then describes that Enoch went to a place of complete darkness. Nothing was there, and no living creature could go there, or at least they could not dwell there. It's described that he saw the mountains of the darkness of winter, and he saw where all the water floated from. And from what we can gather, he witnessed the whole system of Earth's waters. Enoch then saw the storehouse of where God keeps his winds, or the winds that move the air, clouds, and weather. Enoch then sees the cornerstone of the earth, and he saw four winds that kind of acted like pillars. He then said that these winds acted as pillars between the sky and the earth. Enoch then learns that wind controls the motion of the sun and stars, guiding them across the sky to their daily setting. He then describes that he saw the winds of the earth carrying the clouds. It also then describes that Enoch saw the routes of where the angels were traveling, so like routes of where angels would travel, and he went to the edge of the world where heaven and earth would meet. Now, Enoch sees a burning land, lit day and night by fire, and there stands 7 colossal mountains, each made of precious stones. 3 to the east, colored, pearl, and jacinth. 3 to the south, red stone. And the middle one reaches heaven like God's throne, made of alabaster with sapphire top, or with a sapphire top. Enoch then describes that he saw a flaming fire and that it was over the region of where heaven and earth were completed. Enoch then says that he saw a bottomless pit, that there were pillars of fire that were constantly rising and lowering forever. From what we can gather, this can possibly be a place for the fallen angels. Enoch then sees absolute nothingness. No sky, no earth, no nothing. He described that it was a waste and that it was a horrible place. Enoch then sees 7 burning stars. From what we can gather, these aren't actually stars. These are fallen angels that rebelled against God. It then describes that because they disobeyed God, they were going to be bound in fire for 10,000 years. Uriel, one of the 4 archangels, tells Enoch that the fallen angels are kept there, the ones that bred with women, and that they can shapeshift and trick humans into worshiping demons, pretending that they're gods, and they're going to be trapped there until Judgment Day. Uriel then goes on to explain that the angels are going to be punished and condemned, and the women that join them will be turned into sirens. Enoch then describes that he is the only one that has seen these things and that no one on earth has seen the stuff that he has, or nobody on earth saw the same. This chapter starts off with, it's basically like a roll call of all the good angels. First we have Uriel. Uriel is the in charge of the world and prison of the abyss. This is where the fallen angels are kept. Raphael watches over human spirits, basically their protector. Ragael is an angel that punishes heavenly beings that misbehave, or takes vengeance on the world of luminaries. Michael protects the good part of humanity and keeps chaos in check, so basically the go-to angel for order and battle, or battle and order. Seraquael he's basically like the watchdog of these spirits that go bad. Gabriel deals with paradise, and he also deals with supernatural creatures, so like serpents, cherubims, heavenly beings. Remiel is the angel who watches over resurrection, or people who rise from the dead. It is then described that Enoch goes to a totally messed up place, and that there was no sky, no ground, it was just chaos, and that it was a horrible place. It was both horrible and unstable. He then sees that there were 7 trapped stars, and they were like huge fiery mountains, and they were locked and punished, and that they could not be in the sky anymore. Enoch then asks Uriel, one of the 4 archangels, or the holy archangels, why they were being punished, and Uriel responds to Enoch by telling him that these were the rebellious stars that disobeyed God, and that they were going to be imprisoned for 10,000 years, or serve a sentence that was equal to their sin. Enoch then sees a place where it is described that fire is everywhere. Upon seeing this, Enoch is terrified. He then looks to Uriel, and in response, Uriel explains to Enoch that this is the place where the fallen angels are kept. They're going to be kept here forever. Enoch then visits a mountain, and it is described that the mountain was made of hard rock, and in the mountain were 4 huge hollow chambers. A place not really built for humans, or clearly not a place where humans could live, or people could live. Raphael then explains to Enoch, the angel that was with Enoch at this time, that these chambers, they acted as waiting rooms for the dead until Judgment Day. And then Enoch hears someone crying, and this someone crying is Abel. Abel's spirit is described as crying out and wanting justice against Cain, and that he is not going to stop crying out until justice or judgment has been brought to Cain's descendants, or judgment or justice. For those who do not know the story of Cain and Abel, or don't know how that went down, basically Cain and Abel are the sons of Adam and Eve. Cain and Abel, they were brothers. Cain was jealous of Abel, so he killed Abel. Cain is generally credited with being the first murderer, or the first one to carry out the first act of murder. Raphael then goes on to explain to Enoch that the chambers were separated in terms of what spirit it was. So if it was a righteous spirit, that spirit would have a bright chamber with water. But if it was a wicked spirit, it is described that they will be held in a painful holding cell until Judgment Day. It then describes that Enoch went to the far west, or where the ends of the earth were. Enoch then describes that he saw a burning fire that flowed without stop. Raguel, the angel that was at or with Enoch at this time, explained to Enoch that this fire moved the sun, the moon, and the stars into their cycle. Enoch then says that he saw a mountain range of fire that never stopped burning. Beyond the fire, he sees 7 huge, beautiful mountains, all unique and sparkling with gems. 3 sit in the east, stacked together, and 3 more rise in the south. Between them lie deep, harsh valleys not connected to each other. In the middle stands the tallest mountain, looking like a giant throne surrounded by sweet-smelling trees. One tree stands out. It's described that its scent is unlike anything on earth, and it never withers or dies. Enoch praises it and that it was pretty, perfect, and sweet-smelling. The angel at this time with Enoch, the archangel Michael, begins to explain to Enoch what the mountains and the divine tree mean. Michael then asks Enoch, "Yo, Enoch, why are you so obsessed with this tree? Why are you so curious about it?" Enoch then responds by saying that he wanted to know about everything, but he wanted to know about this tree specifically. Michael then goes on to explain that the mountain is God's throne and that when he comes down to bless the earth or the world, he will sit there. As for the tree, Michael goes on to explain that this was the tree of life and that no one can touch or eat from it until Judgment Day. So God finishes his plan and judges creation. He goes on to say that the righteous will be able to eat from this tree and that this tree will be moved into God's holy temple. It then describes that Enoch went to the center of the earth and he found a beautiful place where trees never stop growing and blossoming. While he was there, he saw a holy mountain, and from under the holy mountain, a river was flowing, and it described that it was heading south. A river ran from under the mountain, and it described that it was heading towards south. He notices another, even taller mountain to the east, and between the two is a tight, deep canyon with another stream behind it, and that the landscape feels powerful, like the earth itself is alive and moving. To the west, there's a smaller mountain with a dry canyon beside it. No water there, only emptiness. At the ends of these 3 mountains, more deep, dry ravines stretch out. A land of extremes, lush and barren, all mixed together. Every ravine is steep, rocky, and lifeless. No trees, just solid stone. Enoch can't stop staring. He's in awe, stunned by how massive and strange God's earth can be. Enoch then asks why there was a good land that was filled with trees next to a cursed valley, or a accursed valley. Uriel, one of the holy archangels, then he explains to Enoch that the accursed valley that they were talking about was where people who spoke against God would go, or that was where people who spoke against God will be judged. And that when the final judgment happens, the wicked will be judged publicly and the righteous will praise God for it. And that the righteous will thank God for being merciful to them during this judgment. Enoch then praises God for his justice and mercy. Enoch then travels east to a dry mountain area. He finds a lonely desert, but is surprised to find out that it has trees and plants. It then describes that water was pouring down heavily and it was flowing towards the northwest, and it made it to where there was cloud and mist all around. It then describes that Enoch moves to another spot in the desert and that it was east of the mountains. He then sees fragrant trees that smell like frankincense and myrrh, and they look like almond trees. Enoch then travels farther east and finds a watery valley. There is a fragrant tree like mastick, and the valley sides have cinnamon. He keeps moving east. Enoch sees more mountains with groves of trees that produce nectar and stuff called sarara and galbanum. Far to the east, he sees another mountain covered with aloe trees and almond-like trees. full of stacte. Stacte? What are these words, man? When the trees or stacte are burned, they produce a extremely sweet fragrance. Enoch is then described as seeing 7 mountains in the north, and that the mountains were covered with valuable spices and fragrant trees. He travels east past the mountains over the sea and past an angel named Zotiel, and then he reaches something called the Garden of Righteousness. It's described that when Enoch reached the garden, there was a beautiful and a uncountable amount of trees, and it also had the tree of wisdom, not wisdom, but the tree of knowledge there. For those who do not know what that is, if you eat from it, you gain knowledge. Or knowledge or wisdom. The tree of knowledge is described as being tall, has carob-like leaves, grape-like fruit, and gives off a strong, far-reaching fragrance. Enoch then proceeds to comment on the trees. They're beautiful. Enoch is then described as going to the ends of the earth, and there he sees birds and beasts. He sees birds and beasts, and they look different in their looks, unique in the way they sound and their form. Basically, they looked different from one another. He then described, or at least from what he was seeing, that the heavens seemed to touch the earth, and that the ends of where the sky rested, it looked like there was heavenly openings or portals that were visible. Enoch then sees stars that are emerging from these portals. He starts to count them and where they came from. With the help of Uriel, Enoch records the name of the stars, their paths, their locations, and their timing. Basically, Enoch is learning the heavenly map. Uriel is described as giving Enoch the full knowledge of the stars, so he tells him stuff like their names, their rules, and how they were grouped with each other. Enoch then travels north. While he's traveling north, it's described that he saw a massive, impressive structure at the edge of the world. He then sees that there are 3 heavenly openings in the north, and from these portals or heavenly openings is coming cold, rain, snow, and ice, and that it was heading towards the world, or it was going towards the world. It is then described that one portal brought healthy weather to Earth, but the other 2, let's just say they didn't really do a whole lot of good to Earth. Enoch then goes west, and he sees another 3 heavenly openings, or 3 openings like the ones he saw in the west, and that each had their own outlet. Enoch then describes that there were 3 portals in the south, and that from these portals came stuff like dew, wind, rain, It is then described that there is another 3 portals in the east, and that above these 3 portals were smaller portals, and that from these smaller portals came stars, and they would go out to their assigned paths. Enoch then praises God so angels, humans, and spirits, or spirits and humans, could see and honor his works. Now, that was the end of the first section of Enoch, or the Book of Watchers. Next is the Book of Parables, or the Book of Similitudes. I may or may not have said this at the beginning, but the Book of Enoch is comprised of 5 sections that are often or sometimes called the 5 books of Enoch, and they all add up to 108 chapters. It is then described that Enoch gets another vision, but this vision is called the Vision of Wisdom, and that he is going to share it with the ancient people and the future generation. It is then described that it would have been easier for him to share this message or to share it with the ancient people, but he was going to share it with everybody, including the future people, and that no one has ever received the wisdom that he did from God, and that God gave him eternal life. Or from God, who gave him eternal life. He then says that he was given 3 parables, and that he is going to share these 3 parables with Earth. The first parable: the righteous show up, and the wicked get judged, and they are kicked off of Earth. God's chosen and the righteous is shown before the faithful. It also describes that he has light and joy. It's then described that the truth of the righteous comes out, and the wicked people are going to be exposed and pushed away. It's then described that the rich and the powerful, they lose everything, and they cannot look at the holy ones because God's light shines on them. The rulers and elites lose their power, visibility, and the faithful rise. Holy children will come down from heaven, and Enoch receives books of anger, punishment, and unrest. These people will not get mercy according to God. A whirlwind is then described as physically moving Enoch and putting him at the edge of heaven. Enoch then sees where the holy and righteous people live. Angels and the holy people live together and they pray for humans, and that righteousness and mercy is constant there. Enoch then sees the elect one. This person lives close under God and under the wings of the Lord of the spirits. During this time, the righteous dominate, and the righteous are also uncountable before God, or they are countless before God. The righteous are powerful, constantly blessing God, and that righteousness and rightness will never end there. Enoch then expresses how much he wants to live there, or how much he wants to stay there. God then tells Enoch that this place was already assigned to him. Enoch then praises God for giving him blessing and honor, or glory. Enoch looks at this place for a long time and blesses it, acknowledging God's eternal knowledge. The ones that are awake constantly praise God and acknowledge that he fills the earth with spirits. He then sees the ones who never sleep and that they were constantly praising God. It also describes that Enoch could not keep looking at them. Enoch is then described as seeing a multitude of angels, or a uncountable amount of angels, and that amongst these angels were 4 angels that stood at the side of God. Enoch is then told their names and hidden things. Enoch then hears the 4 beings praising God. The first one praises God eternally. The second one praises the chosen one and all the chosen who depend on God. The third voice prays for humans on earth, and the fourth voice stops Satan accusing people before God. Enoch then asks the accompanying angel who the 4 are. The angel answers. The first is Michael, merciful and patient. The second is Raphael, in charge of diseases and wounds of humans. Third is Gabriel, in charge of all powers. Fourth is Phanuel, in charge of repentance and hope for eternal life. These 4 are God's angels, and the 4 voices Enoch heard. Enoch is then described as seeing heaven's secrets and how God's kingdom is divided. He then sees how human actions are judged, and then he sees the righteous and the elect dwelling. He then goes on to see that the sinners are being punished and driven away. Enoch then sees how lightning, wind, thunder, and clouds and dew are divided, and how to act on earth. Enoch then describes that where these natural forces came from, so like the wind, hail, mist, clouds, and that they were from specific chambers that hovered over the earth. Enoch then sees the chambers of the sun and moon and their paths, orbit, and order. They are described as staying on their path and they don't change them, and that they make an oath to each other so they stay faithful to each other, or they keep an oath to keep faith with each other. And described that the sun moved along its path by God's command, or under God's command. It then describes that the sun and moon are constantly giving praise and thanks, and that their rest is in their thanks. It also says that the sun can bless or curse, and that the moon can offer lightness to the righteous but give darkness to the sinners, and that God can separate lightness and darkness, and that he divides and strengthens human spirits. It's described that no angel or power can stop this, and that God anoints a judge and judges. It's then described that wisdom could not find a place to live, so she lives in heaven, or that there was a place for her in heaven, and that she tried living among the humans, but she couldn't find a place. Then described that wisdom goes back to heaven and sits with the angels, and that from wisdom's chambers came unrighteousness, and that she went to people that she did not seek, and she lived with them. It is then described that unrighteousness spreads over people like rain in the desert, or like dew in the dry land. It's then described that Enoch sees lightning and stars, and he sees God calling them by their name, and that they obeyed. Enoch then observes the lightning and the stars, and that they were measured fairly by their light, and that their motion, size, and timing, and they moved in order matching the angels, and that they stayed loyal to each other. Enoch then asks his guide angel what this stuff means. The angel then told Enoch that God revealed to him a symbolic meaning, and that the light represented the holy people on earth that would believe in God forever. Enoch is then described as observing the stars, and that they turned into lightning, and that once they did this, they stayed like that, not reverting back. This is a parable about people rejecting the name of God and his holy dwelling. These sinners will not enter heaven, and they cannot go back to earth, and they will be kept for a future time for punishment and distress. It is then described that when God's judgment comes, the chosen one will sit on the throne judging people's actions. It also describes that the righteous will have an uncountable amount of resting places, and that the righteous will be strengthened once they see other people trusting in God's name, and that God will place his chosen one among the people, and that God will change heaven into a place of endless blessing and light. It's then described that God is going to change the earth into a blessed place, and that the chosen are going to be able to stay there, but the wicked will not be able to stay there, or they won't be allowed there. And that God will give peace and safety to those who live before him, and that the wicked will have coming judgment, and they will be removed from the earth. Enoch is then described as seeing an ancient being with white hair and a man that had a shining and kind face of a holy angel. Enoch then asks who the Son of Man is and why he has the head of days. The angel then explains to Enoch that the Son of Man is perfectly righteous, he reveals hidden things, and that he was chosen by the Lord of Spirits to receive eternal honor. And that the Son of Man will take away the position of the powerful rulers, and that he will take away the strength from the strong, and that he will destroy the sinners. It is then described that he will take down the kings and rulers because they do not give praise or recognize where their power came from. It describes that the strong will be humiliated, and they will live with worms in the darkness because they refused to honor the name of the Lord of Spirits. It describes that they opposed God, and that they lived on earth doing evil, and that they relied on their wealth, and that they worshipped man-made gods, and that they rejected the name of the Lord of Spirits, and that they attacked God's followers and those who are faithful to his name. The prayer and the blood of the righteous that were spilled are presented before God. The angels in heaven join together, they pray, and they praise and bless God. It's described that the angels acted on behalf of the righteous whose blood were shed, and that their prayers will not be ignored, and that judgment will be made for them, and that they will suffer no more, or they won't suffer forever. Enoch then sees God sitting on his throne. So I kind of wanted to add some context. This reading segment goes on for about like 4 or 5 minutes. The reason being is at the time I was filming on my phone, and my phone was at like 3%. So, and it was also the last couple chapters of that segment, and I wanted to finish it off before my phone died. You can skip over this part if needed. I still tell you everything, it's just in reading form. But yeah, I thought I'd just give some context to that. Okay, back to the video. And that the record of the living are opened, and that heavenly beings and counselors stand before him. It then describes that the holy beings rejoice because the righteous are counted, and that God has heard their prayers, and that the blood of the righteous has been acknowledged. Enoch then sees an endless fountain of righteousness and wisdom, and that if someone wanted to learn about wisdom, they could drink from these, and they would live among the holy righteous and chosen. The Son of Man is officially named and recognized before God, the Lord of Spirits, or the Lord in Spirits, in the head of days, or and the head of days. It's described that the Son of Man's name was known to God before the creation of the sun and stars and heavenly signs. The Son of Man supports the righteous so they do not fall. He guides the non-Jews, the Gentiles, and gives them hope to the troubled, or gives hope to the troubled. Everybody on earth will worship the Son of Man, and through him they will praise and honor God, and that the Son was chosen by God and was kept hidden by God from creation and forever. and that God's wisdom revealed the Son of Man to the holy and righteous, and that the righteous are preserved because they reject the world's evil and its works, and that people are saved through the Son of Man's according to God's plan. It then describes that the kings and strong people will be humbled during this time of suffering, and that they cannot save themselves, and that God will deliver them to the chosen so that they will be destroyed. On their day of punishment, the earth will experience peace, and the wicked will fall and never rise, and that they rejected God and his anointed, and people praise God's name, and that wisdom is abundant and it is freely given, and that the glory of the Son of Man, or of man, will never end. It then describes that the Son of Man is powerful in understanding righteousness, and that evil will vanish from the face of the earth, or from the earth, and that the Son of Man's power and glory will last forever through all generations. It's described that the Son of Man contains the spirit of wisdom, insight, understanding, and strength, and also contains the spirit of the righteous who have died, and that the Son of Man will judge hidden matters, and that no one can lie to him, and that he is the chosen one by God, acting according to his will. The righteous and chosen will experience transformation, and they will have light, glory, and honor. It then describes that when the punishment of the sinners come, the righteous will triumph through God, and that the sinners will see this and they will repent and stop doing evil. Even those who lack honor will still be saved through God's name because he is very compassionate. God judges fairly, and evil cannot withstand God's glory, and the unrepentant will be destroyed at his judgment. God declares that he will show no more mercy to the unrepentant from this point going forward. It then goes on to describe that the earth, Sheol, the grave, and hell are going to give back all the souls that they have been holding. And then it describes that the elect one, from what we can gather, is like a messianic figure, is going to separate the wicked and the righteous, and he is going to save his chosen people. It then goes on to describe that God gave the elect one permissions like divine authority, divine wisdom, and he is glorified by God. It then explains that when the coming restoration happen, creation will be filled with joy, and so will the angels. So yeah, everybody's gonna be happy. It says that the earth is going to be happy, and also in simple terms, the righteous are going to be chilling and they're gonna be good. So yeah. God is great. Enoch is then taken by the Spirit, and he's taken in the west, and he is shown 7 mountains. Each mountain is a different type of metal, so like gold, copper, iron, etc. And each mountain represents worldly power and wealth. Enoch then asks the angel that is with him at this time what this stuff meant. The angel then responded to Enoch by telling him that the mountains represented worldly power and that of the earth or something, and that they were going to serve God's chosen one, the Messiah, or the elect one, or the chosen one, chosen by God, yeah. And he'll have control over everything on earth. The angel then tells Enoch that God is going to reveal to him secrets later, but in that time, or while they were there, that all worldly powers were going to melt before the Messiah, and that nothing could stand against him. Basically, in simple terms, it goes on to say that money is useless, and that you could not use money to buy your way out of judgment. Which is, like, crazy within itself. Do you really think some people out there think that they can use money to get themselves out of going to hell? Do you really think so? Because if that's true, that's insane. The angel then goes on to tell Enoch that the weapons that mankind had been making for violence, or just like weapons of death, would not help them, or it won't work for them. Basically, he went on to say that they'd be useless. It then goes on to describe that when the elect one comes, greed, war, etc., and other worldly powers will not be able to stand in his presence. They won't be able to stay in God's presence. Enoch then describes a valley that swallows everything, and that the nations kept trying to honor someone, so likely God or the Messiah, and they kept trying to offer, basically it was symbolization for them trying to offer gifts and honor God, but it just filled a deep hole, you know? Basically, offering gifts to God doesn't really do anything. And then it goes on to describe that the wicked are doing bad things and that God is going to destroy them. Enoch is then described as seeing angels of punishment. From what we can gather, they were crafting tools of torture. Yeah. Which is a pretty metal idea, like angels of God just crafting torture tools. Wicked. Enoch then asks the angel that is with him at this time what these torture devices are going to be used for. The angel then responds to Enoch like they were going to be used for the worldly leaders and basically people who had abused their authority and power, and he then went on to say that their armies would not save them. It then goes on to describe that when the wicked have been judged, or when judgment has been brought upon them, God's chosen one, or the elect, or the Messiah, whatever you want to call him, basically, in simple terms, he and his people are going to be chilling. Enoch then sees a valley that has fire in it, and that worldly leaders are being thrown into this fire. Pretty, Yeah. Enoch then sees very heavy chains, or chains that looked extremely or very heavy. He then asks an angel what these chains are going to be used for. The angel responded to Enoch by telling him that the chains were basically going to be used for Azazel's followers, and that their mouths were going to be covered by jagged rocks or rough rocks, and under God's command. Yeah. For those who forgot who Azazel was the fallen angel that was a part of the Watcher group, and he taught humanity a forbidden plethora of knowledge that they weren't supposed to know. All of them taught them forbidden knowledge, but he was the worst offender. It then describes that the four angels, so like Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Phanuel, is going to take their followers, or Azazel's followers, and throw them into fire on the day of judgment because they misled humans, and yeah, they did that. Oh, and also they followed Satan. They followed Satan and they misled humans. It then describes that God is going to release the waters from above the sky and under the earth as punishment. Yeah. Also, I forget to mention this a lot throughout the video. The book of Enoch is a non-canonical book of the Bible, meaning in mainstream Christianity, or just a lot of Christians in general, this didn't happen. So if anything sounds weird, or you might think about some errors, just know that this book didn't happen. I'm only doing this book because you guys wanted to know the book of Enoch, so yeah, here we are. It goes on to describe that the upper waters and the lower waters are going to be combined, and the upper water was called masculine and the lower water was called feminine. So, in simple terms, the combined power of the two was gonna kill a lot of people. It then goes on to describe that when people realize their wrongdoings, that will be the thing that kills them. So, yeah. How long have I been recording? I've been sitting here a while. Okay, and then it says that, am I reading this right? It says that God destroyed everybody, or that he regretted destroying everybody, and says that it was done in vain, meaning it meant nothing. Again, this book isn't canonical. Don't take anything from this video. God then swears to never destroy humanity, and he puts a sky sign in the sky that will be a lasting promise between God and humanity, or God and humans. God then says that in the future time, he is going to let his anger and punishment stay on those of which he chooses. It then goes on to describe that God is going to, or Earth's powerful rulers are going to watch God as he judges Azazel and his followers. Enoch then describes that he saw angels of punishment carrying whips and chains. Enoch then asks the angel at that time who they were targeting. And then it says this. Okay, now it then says that the angels are going to the chosen and the elect ones, and they're going to throw them into a deep abyss of a valley, and they're going to die there so they don't lead people astray. Which I think when it's talking about I think it's talking about the wicked's chosen and elect, because it would make no sense if it was talking about God's people. I want to take this time again to remind you guys that The book of Enoch is a non-canonical book of the Bible, so this didn't happen, okay? Don't take anything from this video, okay? Okay. It then describes that the angels go east, and they stir up the kings there, and it causes chaos, and they attack violently. It then describes that God's the angels or the human armies that the angels start up, they're going to, trample the land of God's chosen. And then it describes that the city of righteousness is going to block them, so they're just gonna start killing each other. Yeah. It then says that Sheol, the grave or underworld, is going to open up and it is going to swallow them, and that the sinners will be destroyed in front of God's people. Enoch is then described as seeing wagons or chariots in the sky and or like going through the sky, and that they were coming from different directions. It then goes on to describe that the chariots or the wagons, whatever you want to call them, were so loud and chaotic that the whole world heard it in one day, and the holy ones, or the ones in heaven, also noticed it. And then everybody is going to bow down and worship God. This is the end of the second parable. Mind you, all of which I have told you up until this point, like the Book of Watchers, that ended like a while ago in this video. So everything I have told you has been 2 parables. The third parable is like another 20 chapters. Enoch starts the third parable, and it's about the righteous and the chosen. It describes that the righteous and chosen are blessed because their future is honorable and great. It also describes that their lives will never end or be limited by time, and that they're going to live bright like the sun. It describes that they will live under peace, under God's name, and that they're going to look for light, and they will find righteousness with God, and that the holy ones in heaven are going to learn the secrets of righteousness and light, because light will replace darkness on earth. It describes that endless light will shine and the darkness will be gone, and that the righteousness will stand permanently with God forever. Enoch sees the hidden works of lightning and light, and that they could either bless or curse, and it depended on God's will. Enoch is then shown how thunder works, or how God would use it for judgment, and how it could be used for good or punishment. Enoch is then shown all the mysteries of light and lightning, and that God uses them for blessing and fulfillment. It is then described that during Enoch's 500th year, or during the 500th year of Enoch, the heavens shook violently, and the angels were both scared and disturbed, or distressed. It is then described that God was sitting on his throne, surrounded by the righteous and the angels. It describes that Enoch was terrified by this sight, and that he fell to the ground. Yeah, this is like the 3rd time he's done this. It then describes that, also in simple terms, mind you, this is really blunt. Michael tells an angel to go get Enoch and to like kind of like help him up, or like pick him up. And when Enoch regained his strength, he said that he couldn't handle it. Michael then went on to say, or he told Enoch not to panic, and that God had been patient with humans until now. Yeah. Or that God's patience has lasted until now, but he did keep patience with humanity. Michael then went on to explain to Enoch that in the coming judgment, there is going to be a reward for the righteous, so like a covenant, and there is going to be a inquisition for those who reject God or misused his name. Or misuse his name. It then describes that it will strike entire families, so like parents, children's, and just so God's judgment is not wasted, the aftermath, or afterwards, the judgment will reflect God's mercy. Enoch is then described as seeing 2 creatures that were separated by God. One of them is feminine and was placed at the deep sea. This creature is called Leviathan. And that the other creature, the male beast, was placed in the desert area, so somewhere near the Garden of Righteousness. And Enoch also mentions that that was the place of which Adam, or his great-grandfather was taken up, so likely Adam or Jared. This beast is called Behemoth. Enoch then asks the angel how these two beasts were separated in one day, one in the deep sea, one in the desert. The angel then tells Enoch that what he was asking was secret knowledge, so from what we can gather, probably not supposed to talk about it. Another angel explained to Enoch the hidden knowledge about everything, so yeah. The angel then explained to Enoch how winds were stored up and how they were pushed through portals and how the moon and sun are organized by their power and name. Enoch, or not Enoch, but they went on to explain how lightning struck in specific places and how lightning was divided into different forces that obey commands. It then describes that thunder has the resting points before sounding and that lightning and thunder act together and that there was a spirit that linked timing between the two, and that when lightning flashes, thunder follows, controlled by a spirit that time and directs both. The sound and energy are restrained and guided across the earth by divine control. It is then described that the sea movement is controlled by a spirit pulling it forward and backward across the world's mountain. It is then described that frost and hail have their own angels that govern over them. It is then described that the hail's angel is good. And then it describes that the snow spirit left its chamber due to its strength, and that its spirit was unique, and that vapor comes from it, and it is called frost. It then goes on to describe that mist has its own chamber with its own angel, and that it can both separate light and darkness through all seasons. So dew lives at heaven's edge, linked with rain. Dew and mist share clouds and exchange moisture between them across seasons. It is then described that the rain is released from the chambers by the angels, and that it is spread over the earth, and that the rain becomes a part of the earthly waters. Mind you, this part just talks a lot about weather and how all that happens. Yeah. How long is this book? Hey guys, can you check the time on the video? How long has it been? How long have I been sitting here?
Let's just say you're gonna be sitting here for a while longer.
It is then described that the rain nourishes the earth, and that it is measured and it is managed by angels. Enoch is described as seeing all the stuff near the garden where the righteous live. And the angel of peace, who was with me and said to me, "These two monsters, prepared comfortably to the greatness of God, shall feed." And you gotta think, the majority of Enoch, right, is just a bunch of Enoch, asking something, and then the angels being like, okay, that's what that means. It kind of acts a lot, not a lot, but it's kind of similar to Dante's Inferno or Dante's Divine Comedy, where Dante will ask a question, and then Virgil will be like, that's how that works. That's how that works. And it's just a repeated version of that, because when you really sit down and think about it, right, the majority of the book of Enoch is just wicked and righteous, God, angels, weather, Enoch asking questions. And that's pretty much it, you know? If you are expecting a story-driven book of Enoch, it's not very story-driven in the sense of how the Christian canon or how, the Bible actually is. So, Judges, where God appoints judges, and they have a whole bunch of stuff that happens. Basically, Enoch throughout this is having, visions, right? And he's kind of just, relaying it onto us. Mind you, I say that in a sense of, this book is non-canonical, in the story-driven part of it, or if it even has a story-driven part. So, for example, the parts where, I'm reading it to you, and it sounds like this is what the book of Enoch is about. If we're being real, the book of Enoch isn't, as I said previously, isn't really a story-driven book. It's kind of just Enoch asking stuff, and then the angels being like, oh yeah, that's true. It also talks a strange amount about weather and nature, which I can see why, but you know. It is then described that Enoch sees angels and they have cords, they grow wings, they fly north or they head north, and they leave to do something specific. Enoch then proceeds to ask one of the angels what they were doing, and they respond to Enoch by telling him that they were going to measure something. The angel responded to Enoch by telling him that the cords were made for the righteous, and that the chosen people will live together, and the cords represented their faith and righteousness. It then describes that the measurements were basically going to uncover everything that was dead on Earth or in Earth, and it hints that no one can be fully destroyed unless it's by God, by saying, here, let me find it. It says no one can be fully destroyed before God, which I guess when you really think about it, if God is the one who created you, nothing else should be able to destroy you. Like, imagine if God created you and, like, some other force destroyed you that wasn't God. That really wouldn't make any sense, would it? It really wouldn't. It then describes that all heavenly beings united under one voice to praise God, and that God continues to call on he calls on, like, the heavenly beings, so, like, the cherubim, the seraphim, etc. It then describes that the elect one will be the judge of all, even angels, and that secrets will be revealed, and all will praise God. Also, if you couldn't already tell, when the book of Enoch says, the elect one, the Son of Man, or the chosen one, it's likely referring to Jesus, especially when it says the Son of Man, because in the Bible, or in the Hebrew Bible, or just like the Christian canon, Jesus repeatedly refers to himself as the Son of Man. So if we take that same knowledge, right, and we apply it to the book of Enoch, the Son of Man would also have to be Jesus. Although the book of Enoch doesn't specifically call him Jesus, it does, like, call him other stuff like the Son of Man, the elect, the chosen one. And if we're being real, the book of Enoch is a little too specific on the Son of Man. Like, it literally describes the Son of Man or the chosen one or the elect or whatever you want to call him having a bunch of authority. He's literally described as having direct protection from God, and he's under the Lord of Spirits. He's under the wings of the Lord of Spirits. That's what it says. And as I said just now, the book of Enoch, like, throughout it, it describes the Son of Man having a bunch of authority. Who else? Even though this book isn't even canonical, it has to be Jesus. Who else could it be? It then describes that every angel and heavenly being joined in massive praise to God. Literally everybody in heaven praises God. It then describes that God puts the chosen one onto his throne, and that his words can destroy evil people. Just like I said previously, he put the Son of Man, or the elect one, or the chosen one, whatever you want to call him, he put him on his own throne and said that his words would literally destroy evil people. Who else is doing that like Jesus? It then describes that the worldly leaders are going to see the elect one judging truthfully and powerfully. It then describes that evil people will freak out once they find out who is really in charge. It then describes that the Son of Man was God's chosen ruler, and that it was kept a secret, and that only the faithful knew about it. It then describes that God's people will stand tall, but the evil people will bow and beg. The wicked are then described as being humiliated and punished by angels for what they did to the faithful, or because they hurt the faithful. It then goes on to say that God's people are basically going to be chilling with God, and they're going to be happy, honored, and they will never age. Which is a question I've always wondered to myself. Like, when you die, right, if you're an old man or a woman and you die and you go to heaven, do you stay an old woman, or would you revert back to your younger self? I have never gotten a good answer. Or, to make it more interesting, would you revert back to an age that showed you were most innocent or pure? Like, say if you were most innocent when you were like a little kid, right? Would you be a little kid in heaven? Or what if you were pure and innocent while you were an old man? Would you be an old man? Or, like, this is an interesting question. It needs to be answered. Rulers are described as being punished by God, and they basically beg God for mercy so they can admit they were wrong, and then they admit that their power, or God's power, is greater than theirs. or that God's power and justice is greater than theirs, which is actually insane. They had to admit that. They had to be like, oh yeah, God is greater than us. We're like not better than God. Would you guess? Could you guess it? Who would have thought, you know? Which kind of makes me think of how big was their pride for them to think that they were better than God Almighty. That's a case nowadays. Some people actually do believe that. Some people just straight up have God complexes and just think that they're better than God, which makes no sense. It then describes that they regret their choices later, but it is too late. It describes that they had worshipped other things besides God, and that was the thing that they were being judged for. It then describes that they know, or that they now know, that their wealth meant nothing, and in the end, they just ended up in a grave. They're humiliated, rejected, and cut off. What? I just heard a sound. What was that? But yeah, they're humiliated, rejected, and cut off from God forever. This is the official punishment for all corrupt leaders. No exceptions. Enoch then describes hearing a voice, and the voice is talking about the Watchers and how they told humanity stuff they were never supposed to know, etc. Yeah. Which, in my personal opinion, I feel like the Watchers or the angels in the book of Enoch were not grateful for anything that they had. Like, you gotta think about it from a perspective, right? They were in heaven. They had it all. They were near God. They were in heaven. They had it all. And then they traded it away for some lust. Like, that's weird. Like, why would you do that? And it was all because they wanted women. They wanted wives. Which, by the way, they were immortal angels. Why would they have the dream or aspiration of having a wife? You're not even human. Why would you want that? Which also presents another question. Can angels lust? No. No, they can't, okay? The book of Enoch is a non-canonical book, okay? The angels lusted in this book, which would make no sense because, like, if they're from heaven, a place where you can't sin, how would they hold the capability to lust? If they're in a place, heaven, that you can't lust. And if you were to lust, it would be a sin. So, in this chapter, Noah asks Enoch what had happened. So, basically, what's his name? Enoch gives Noah a whole rundown as what has happened previously. So, like, humans found out things that they were never supposed to know, and they used this knowledge to commit all acts of evil and sin. Or all acts of evil, just like sin really badly. And because of this, God could not forgive them. So, they all had to die, and God was going to be the one to kill them. But Noah, baby, since you're the only righteous one, you get to live. Which is actually crazy when you sit down and think about it. Before, like, pre-flood, right? Pre-flood, there was a entire world population. Out of all those people, out of all of them, there was only one righteous man, and that righteous man was Noah. Think how crazy that is. The population was massive at that time. So for there only to be one righteous man, that's insane. That only, out of the entire population, only one man was deemed righteous in the eyes of God. And that man was Noah. God then showed Enoch that there were angels of the earth or angels of punishment that controlled the entire waters of earth. And that they were ready to destroy earth. Mind you, they have control over the earthly waters of earth, and that they were ready to destroy everything, but God had commanded them not to. Which, if you really think about it, that's such a cool concept, because that angels are like controlling the waters of earth, and they're ready to just bring destruction, but God is like, hold off on that. Yeah! Because in Genesis, it doesn't really say or give a specific or say explicitly that angels are the ones that hold the earthly waters and they're going to destroy earth, but God is commanding them not to do it. In Genesis, it just says that water fell down from the heavens. So yeah, that's when the flood happened, that water was going to fall down from the heavens. Yeah. But it's still a cool concept nonetheless. It then describes that Noah's life is blessed and pure, and the angels are making a wooden structure called a ark. And with this ark, Noah's descendants are going to be able to live and multiply. Yeah. It is then described that the angels who led humanity astray are going to be in a burning valley, and they're going to stay there for eternity, or eternity, permanently, and that the waters in that valley will serve to heal the bodies of kings and mighty people, but also punish their spirits, because their spirits are full of lust and they deny God. It then describes that as they are punished, their spirits are going to be affected by it as well. And then it describes that as they are punished, the temperature is going to change, and then Michael at this time, or the angel that is with Enoch at this time, tells him that it was a sign of the rulers of earth, that the water that once healed them will become fire and it will punish them. Which, I have no idea how that would work. It's probably symbolic. Enoch then tells Noah all the secrets he had, or all the secrets he got from the parables he received, and they kind of like take them and they put them together and they make it into a book. Michael is now talking to Raphael. Mind you, this is very rare in the book of Enoch. We got two angels talking to each other in this dialogue. So Michael is talking to Raphael, and he tells him that what the angels did was so bad that it caused fear and trembling, and that no one could endure it. Michael then notes that the angels' punishment are for those who misled people, and that it was also unavoidable. Michael then declares that before God, he is not going to defend the angels, and that their anger from God came because they acted as if they were God. Which is insane. This is Michael saying this, okay? Michael isn't just some regular angel. In some Christian tradition, he's the top dog. He's him, right? So, and also, Michael was one of the 4 archangels that went to God and literally begged him to intervene with Earth because the angels and the Nephilim were messing everything up so bad. Mind you, the punishment that the angels had was only for them, from what we can gather anyway. So imagine, so no one else was suffering that punishment. It was only them. Imagine if what you did was so bad that nobody on Earth is suffering that punishment. Only you are. That's insane! And then it talks about some more angels, specifically the ones that led humans astray. So I'm going to try to pronounce this to the best of my capability, but I promise nothing. Whew! Okay, so the angels who revealed secrets to humans are named and identified as leaders who led people into sin. Specific angels and their roles. Jacon led the sons of God to earth and caused them to sin with human women. Asbiel gave evil counsel to the holy sons of God, causing defilements. Gadriel, taught humans about death and weapons, and also misled Eve. Penaquima, or Penamua, however you say his name, taught writing and knowledge, causing humans to sin. Kazdija revealed harmful knowledge about spirits, demons, and death. These revelations and misguidance caused humans to perish and die, which was not intended for them. The oath Ekai, given through Michael, preserves cosmic order. Heavens, earth, sea, sun, moon, stars, winds, rain, and natural forces all follow this oath. Because the Son of Man's name is revealed, judgment is executed. Sinners and those who led the world astray are destroyed, bound, and imprisoned. All corruption and evil are removed. The sons of man's word and judgment are powerful and final before God. Enoch's name is then honored before the Son of Man and God. It also describes that he was taken away by spiritual chariots, and he was taken from earth to heaven. From that point onward, Enoch was no longer counted among humans. God had took him, and he had put him in a place between the north and west winds. Angels measured out a place for the righteous and chosen people. There, Enoch saw the first holy ancestors who had lived righteously since the beginning. Enoch is then described as being taken up by heaven, and the angels grew. They glue glue. They glowed like fire, and their clothes were bright, and their faces were shining like snow. And that there were rivers of fire and blinding light, and that Enoch fell before God on his face. Michael, the archangel, is described as picking Enoch up and kind of like helping him stand, and then he shows him how, like, the hidden truths of heaven. So he shows him the stars, heaven, and how light work. Which, by the way, that had to have blown Enoch's mind. There's no way it didn't. Imagine if the most powerful angel in heaven is showing you how light works. Okay? Tell me you wouldn't think that's awesome? Well, I guess if we think about it realistically, Enoch all up until this point has seen things that, like, humans cannot comprehend. So he probably is still like, what? But at the same time, he still fell on his face before God. So that implies he still hasn't gotten his mind blown so, like, hard to the point where, like, he can, like, shrug it off. Enoch is then taken to, like, the highest heaven, and he sees a crystal-like building that has living fire all around it. Yeah. Streams and walls of fire surrounded the place, and powerful angelic beings, so like seraphim, cherubim, ophanim, they are described as protecting or kind of like guarding God's throne without rest. He then sees a uncountable amount of angels, and that they were moving from and out towards God, or they were moving in and out towards God. Some of these angels included Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Phanuel. He then sees the head of days. Now, whenever the book of Enoch says the head of days, it's talking about God. I don't know if anybody has caught up to that yet, but yeah, whenever in the book of Enoch, whenever it says the head of days, it's talking about God. Enoch is then, he gives like a description of God, or kind of like what he looks like. So he describes God having hair as white as wool, and his clothes were too bright to describe. Enoch, overwhelmed, fell down and praised God. And then an angel told Enoch that the Son of Man was full of righteousness, and that all of the righteous people will live with the Son of Man forever, walking in peace and in goodness forever, or for good. And yeah, that was the third parable. End of the book of parables or similitudes. I would assume it took up the entire video because it was long. Now we're gonna move on to the third section of the book of Enoch, the astronomical book. Now, you're probably going to be wondering, hey, what's the astronomonima? You can't say astronomy, right? You can't say astronomy! Now, a lot of people are going to be asking, hey, what's the astronomical book about, or something? It's literally just about astronomy. That's it. It's literally just about astronomy. It doesn't talk about anything else. It just talks about how the sun, the moon, and the stars work. We already know how they work. 10 whole chapters dedicated to astronomy. We know how astronomy works. But first, it describes that Uriel, the angel in charge of the sun, moon, and stars, shows Enoch how the heavenly lights work. So, like, the Book of Luminaries explains the laws of the sun, its rising, setting, and yearly pattern. The sun rises and sets through 6 portals in the east and west. It moves through portals over the course of a year, making days longer or shorter depending on the season. When the sun rises through higher number portals, days get longer, summer. When it moves back through portals, nights get lower, winter. A full solar cycle equals about 364 days, 1 year. The sun's light is 7 times brighter than the moon's, though both appear the same size. The sun never stops moving. It runs day and night as God commanded. Enoch is then shown the law of the moon, the smaller luminary, and that its path and shape was like the sun's, and that it was driven by wind. It then went on to describe that the moon's light was weaker than the sun's light, and that the moon could only shine as 1/7 as bright as the sun. It also described that the moon's rising and setting changed every month following a regular cycle. It then described that the first time the moon would appear would be after 30 days, when it would appear with the sun. After that, each day after that, the moon would gain more light, but it would be through measurable portions. And that its full and dark phases are caused by measured divisions of light given to it. I'm starting to realize how confusing this is starting to sound, so I'm going to kind of explain it easily to you. You'll still be able to understand it, just like it'll be easier. Enoch learns about the smaller moon, which is called the smaller moon. He learns about the moon, which is called the smaller light, and how it travels throughout the sky, like a chariot being pushed by the wind. It then describes that God would give a set amount of light to the moon, not too much and not too little, and that every month the light of the moon would change. That's why we would see the moon getting bigger and smaller. It then went on to describe that the moon was only 1/7 as bright as the sun, and that moon would show up again after 30 days. That's why it was like a thin crescent shape. It then describes that as time went on, this moonlight would get less brighter, and it happened in 7 steps until it got bright again. After that, it loses light again in the same way, shrinking bit by bit. Sometimes the moon rises and sets with the sun, so you can't see it that night. Then it starts to move away from the sun, and you will start to see more of it each night. The angel Uriel then tells Enoch how the moon moves every month, and that the moon had rules or laws on how it could shine and travel in the sky. Enoch wrote everything down, so how bright it gets when it moves and how it changes. So listen, I'm going to be very honest with you, bro, okay? There are 3 sections or 3 books, whatever you want to call them, in the book of Enoch, right? This one is probably the most boring. Because literally all it does is talk about astronomy. You and I know how astronomy works. And it's not really that accurate astronomy. I'll get to that later in the video. But it's really just not interesting. Not in the way of what you would think. It just talks about astronomy. It does give hints about angels and God. It does talk about that, but not as cool or not as interesting as you would think. So here's what I'm gonna do. Throughout this book, this book of astronomy, I'm just gonna read certain parts to you. Now, I guarantee you're not missing anything too extreme. It's literally just talking about astronomy. Matter of fact, if you don't like astronomy, you could just skip over this part of the video if you want to. I'm still going to tell you everything. It's just some parts are going to be read to you because it's just astronomy. It's just astronomy. Do you want me to look you in your eyes and talk to you about astronomy? Not true astronomy. I'll get to that later in the video. But do you really want me to? I didn't think so. It then talks about that the moon would grow brighter for 15 days until it was full, and then it would get darker for 15 days until it disappeared. It then describes that light gained, or the light in seventh, or no, it then describes that it gained lights in sevenths, so little by little, and it would lose it the same way in the west. And then it describes that in some months the moon would rise and set with the sun. That's why you couldn't see it. Then in other months it moved differently and its own path. And then it describes that the sun and the moon use portals or sky openings, kind of like gateways, they would use these to rise and set. You see how it's literally just talking about astronomy. Do you like this? Do you like that? The moon's timing and brightness changes in patterns, but it always follows the same rhythm. It describes that the sun and stars keep a perfect 365-day calendar. This is going off of Enoch's calendar. And that every 5 years, the sun has an extra 30 days. The moon, however, falls behind the sun, or gets it 30 days behind. This happens about every 5 years. It then just goes off to describe that the sun's time is exact and that the moon lags. That's why the calendars were a bit off. It then describes that there were angels that were in charge of the stars in the skies and that there were thousands of them. It then describes that some of the angels could handle 4 special days that aren't counted in the 365-day year. And then because of those extra 4 days, some people could get confused about the calendar. It is then described that these days help people keep the exact year so that seasons could stay in the right order. The angel Uriel is in charge of showing Enoch how the sun, the moon, and the stars work perfectly together, and that God made them to rule over the sky, and that the sun was for the day, and that the moon was for the night, and that the stars were the helpers. Uriel then shows 12 doors to Enoch, or like things that kind of acted like portals. It is then described that the sunlight would come out from these doors, and that when certain doors opened, that's how like the earth would get warm and how seasons would work. And that there were many windows in the sky, and that they had wind, or that they had wind, dew, and starlight, and they would only come out when God said so. It is then described that some stars never set, and that they moved in circles above the earth. It is then described that one chariot, which is from what we can gather, it's like a heavenly vehicle, leads the others, probably talking about the sun. It's literally just talking about astronomy, okay? If you don't think this is astronomy, it's astronomy. You don't have to be an astronomer to believe that this is astronomy, okay? This is my YouTube channel. I can do what I want, okay? Who do you think you want? Okay, it is then described that there are 12 gates on the edge of the world, and that from these gates came wind, and that there were sets of 3 of wind in each part. So the following: north, south, east, and west. Okay, so this part is very complicated. I'm going to try and explain it as easily to you as I can. Okay, so what each direction does. Okay, so the east winds comes from 3 gates. The first gate is a plus of east and south. It brings heat, drought, and destruction. The second gate, which is like the middle, brings rain, crops, and good weather. The third gate, which is a plus of east and north, brings cold and dryness. The south winds, which also come from 3 gates. The first gate is from south and east. It brings hot air. The second, which is like the middle, brings sweet smelling, rain, and health. The third, which is a plus of south and west, brings rain and locusts, which is like bad bugs. And the north winds, again, each of these are like 3 gates that come from each direction. So come from 3 gates, yeah. The first is a mixture of north and east. It brings dew, rain, and locusts. The second one, it's in the middle, brings good rain, health, and peace. The third one is north plus west. It brings snow, frost, clouds, and cold clouds. Right, and the west winds, which is like the next one, comes from 3 gates. The first is west plus north. It brings frost, snow, and chill. The second one, again, it's like the middle, brings rain and blessings. And the third one is a plus of south and west. It brings burning heat and ruin. Enoch then learned that the world was split into 4 quarters, and that each quarter had its own job and special meaning. In the east, it's called the first quarter because the sun rises there. From what we can gather, it's like the beginning of the day. South is the second quarter. It is special because it's described that God is going to come down there one day, which, yeah, and that it was a holy place where the Lord would show himself in someday. The west, this is called the diminished quarter because it's where the sun goes down and their light starts to fade. Or no, yeah, it's where the sun and the stars go down and its light starts to fade. Yeah, it's supposed to represent ending and darkness. And north, this quarter is split into 3 places. So the first place is where people can live. The second place is filled with oceans, rivers, forests, and, what else? Dark clouds. And the third place is basically like, think of it as like a place of like righteousness. It's called the Garden of Righteousness. It was mentioned earlier in the book of Enoch, but yeah, it's like think of it as like a place of paradise. Yeah. It then shows some extra things that Enoch saw. So there are 7 huge mountains taller than others. They control frost, seasons, and time. 7 giant rivers. So like 1 flows from the west into the Great Sea. 2 flow from the north into the Eurasian Sea. I can't even begin to pronounce that. It's like the Red Sea. Yeah, pretty much. 4 others go into different seas, or maybe even the desert. And that there were 7 great islands, 2 on land, 5 in the sea. It then describes that the sun has 2 different names. The first one is Ojares, and the second one is Thomas. Not how it's traditionally spelled. It's spelled Tomas. It then describes that the sun and the moon were 2 big lights in the sky, and that they were the same shape, but the sun was brighter, which... What? It says that the sun and the moon are the same shape. they're clearly not. I don't know why it says that. And that the sun has 7 extra pieces, and because of that, it made it stronger than the moon. Also, I kind of just wanted to talk about this. When it comes to modern astronomy, all of this is wrong. Like, everything I have told you up until this point is just, when it comes to astronomy, like, you don't have to be an astronomer to know that this stuff is wrong. It literally says that the sun and the moon are the same shape, except the sun is brighter than the moon. Come on now, like, it's going to mention God and angels, but the parts where it talks about just, like, astronomy, it's just wrong. It says that there's 364 days in a year. They're like 1 day off. Again, I'm going to say this again. This book is non-canonical. And this is like not... So like the lesson it's giving us about astronomy, don't listen to anything or don't take anything away from it. It's clearly wrong. By like astronomy today, by like modern astronomy, it's just so incorrect. I mean, you can't really blame him either, because I believe this book dropped in like the BCE times. I think. I could be wrong. But just like, it's just so wrong. You don't even have to be an astronomer to know that this stuff is wrong. So basically, or essentially what's happening, right, is the astronomical book, all right? The book of astronomy is giving us untrue astronomy while also being inside of a non-canonical book, meaning it didn't happen. So, essentially what's happening is you're reading a non-canonical book inside of a non-canonical book. That's insane. And then it travels through the sky, and it rises in the east, and it sets in the west, and it goes to the north, and kind of like goes around to set again. So the moon has 4 names: Asanja, Ebla, Besanje, and Are. The moon gets its light from the sun, and it grows and shrinks in a perfect pattern every month. This is called waxing and waning. How the moon grows, waxing. When the moon first appears, only a small piece, 1/14 of light shows. Each night, it gets brighter, or she gets brighter, until the 15th day, when she becomes full and shines completely. How the moon shrinks, waning. After the full moon, she loses a bit of light each night. Day 1 of shrinking, 14 parts left. Day 2, 13 parts. Day 3, 12 parts, and so on until all light is gone by the 15th night and she's dark again. The moon months. Some months have 29 days, others have 28 or 30. The moon does this in sets of 6 months. 3 months of 20 or 30 days, and 3 months of 29 days. Together, this makes her full cycle, waxing plus waning. The moon and sun connection. When the sun sets, the moon rises. That's when you get a full moon night. The moonlight always comes from the sun, even when we can't see it. When her light is gone, the month ends, and a new moon starts again. Uriel, mind you, Uriel has been with Enoch this entire time, and he's just been telling him this stuff. Okay. But Uriel, the angel, has been with Enoch and tells him, yo, that's it. I taught you everything. It basically says that he has learned how the sun and the moon and the stars have worked. He then tells him that every day, week, and month, season, and year has a set pattern. Basically, everything in the sky followed a set of rules and that there was no randomness. It then described that the moon reached its fullest point in the 6th portal, and then after that, it started to phase, or from what we can gather, it's like a waning phase. And then from the whole fading cycle lasted about 177 days, which is about like 25 weeks and 2 days. During this time, the moon would fall behind the sun for about like 5 days every cycle. And everything I have told you, who runs it all? Uriel. Uriel runs this. The angel that we've been talking about, or the angel that has been talking to Enoch, is, from what we can gather, everything, or the astronomy part, the 3rd part of this section, Uriel runs this by himself. So Uriel basically tells Enoch, okay, buddy, I've shown you how the sun, the moon, and the stars work. I also showed you the angels who work them. But then he tells Enoch, kind of like warns him, that when the people sin, the entire universe's pattern, or it breaks its pattern. I'll say that again. When everybody sins, the universe gets broken. It then describes that when the stars go off of their orbit, the sinners won't be able to understand the sky anymore, and that people will start to get confused and start worshiping the stars as if they're gods. It then describes that this confusion causes more evil until punishment eventually wipes it all out. Enoch is then told to pay attention to some heavy stone tablets. And it says that these stone tablets basically have every human action or deed from beginning to end. Bro, meaning Enoch got to see some supreme level product. He got to see literally every human action ever committed. Do you want to know how many thoughts you can have about that? That means he saw every action and deed. In theory, he could have saw every single sin because, a sin can be an action. It just depends on what that sin is. He could have saw every action of Adam and Eve. He could have saw the first sin committed by angels. That's just cool. That's so cool. He could have saw the most violent sins ever committed. He could have also saw the actions, not sins, but the actions of Jesus Christ and be like, I wonder who that is. What if it says their names too? And Enoch is like, yo, who's Jesus? And then they close it. They're like, you're not supposed to know about that. Enoch then blesses God for his patience and power in creating everything. He says, blessed is the person who dies righteous, whose name isn't written in the book of sin and won't face judgment. An angel then comes to Enoch, and he basically tells him to teach everything he saw to Methuselah and his other kids. The angel also said that no one is perfectly righteous, and that Enoch has 1 year to give to give away his commandments, or just to give his commandments. Basically, do what you gotta do. You got 1 year, and 1 year, we're gonna come back for you. The last things that Enoch said is the following. The good would live with the good, and they would be happy together. The evil will die with the evil. The righteous will die early only because of the sins of others. The angels then drop Enoch off. Enoch goes home, but praising God one last time for ruling the whole world. So, Enoch has a son. His name is Methuselah. Now, Methuselah, from what we can gather from the biblical and Christian canon, or from the Bible, right? He is the most longest living human ever. So, Methuselah lived to be about 969 years old, making him the longest living human ever. Enoch tells Methuselah, his son, that he wrote everything down for him, and that Methuselah is to guard these books and to pass these books down to his kids. And that the book contained heavenly wisdom and knowledge that no one could figure out on their own. Which, from what it describes, Enoch, he gave these books to Methuselah, right? And Methuselah was to pass these books down to his kids. And also, Methuselah was like the longest living human ever. So do you think Methuselah got to see those books more than once? Like, for example, Methuselah was the longest living human ever. Generations would go by and he would still be alive. So what if someone had a question? Like, for example, Methuselah's great-great-great-grandson or whatever, and they had a question about these books that they had. The most realistic answer would be to go to Methuselah, because he's the only one who could understand them. Well, in the sense of, he's, been around longer and he knows the books, because he was the first one to get them from his dad. Or maybe I'm just overthinking it, whatever, back to the thing. It then describes that the wisdom that was contained in this book was deep and it was very smart, and that anybody that learned from the wisdom of this book would never stay lazy and they would always be alert. So, people who live right and avoid sin are blessed. They live by the calendar God made. So the sun moves through the sky and uses 364 days to complete a year. These are extra days, so intercalendary days, if I'm saying that right. That keeps the seasons balanced, so 4 of them. Most people ignore these days, which is why their calendars get messed up. And then it goes on to say of what what Uriel taught Enoch. So Uriel, the angel, showed Enoch how everything works. So the sun, moon, and stars, the seasons, months, and festivals, and how they move perfectly on time. So Uriel is basically like the manager of the heavens, making sure light and time run correctly. Okay, this is like the last part and then no more astrology. There are 4 main leaders who control the 4 parts of the year and many sub-leaders who control the months and days. So it goes on to tell you them, but the names are horrendously, like, if I were to tell you, like, I can tell you, I just can't pronounce them is what I'm saying. Like, there's so, I can't. So the first season is spring. The leader is Melkagel. I have no idea. So it's like Tam-Ani / the sun. Rules for 91 days. The signs on Earth are hot weather, calm air, trees grow leaves, crops grow and bloom, winter dries up, and subleaders are Perkael, Zebuzel, and Helujaseph. The second season, which is summer, and the leader of that is Helamelech, the shining sun. Rules for 91 days, signs on earth being blazing heat and dryness, fruits ripen, animals mate in the harvest and winter wine press season. The subleaders are... What are these names? The subleaders are Gidi, Gial, Keel, Heel, and Asaphael. Okay, from what we can gather, that was the end of the book of astronomy, or the astronomy book, whatever. Okay, now we're going to move on to the 4th section of the book of Enoch, which is called the books of dreams / visions. So basically, like, its main themes are stuff like human sin, the flood. It also explains a lot of visions through animalistic symbolism. So basically, like a vision, but animals represent it. So it describes that Enoch had 2 big dreams, and they both happened before he was about to get married. So one of them happened when he was learning how to write, and the other happened when he was, or right before he was about to marry Methuselah's mother. It then describes that the sky collapsed, it fell onto the earth, and the earth opened, swallowing the earth. It describes that mountains fell on top of each other, hills crushed down, and trees were ripped from the ground, and they were thrown into the abyss, or like the bottomless pit that the earth opened up. Enoch's grandfather, Mahalalel, woke him up because he was screaming. Because he was screaming, but Mahalalel, his grandfather, also asked him why he was screaming. That implies that what Enoch saw was so heavily distressing, he was screaming in his sleep. In his sleep! And then Enoch starts to tell Mahalalel the dream that he had, and Mahalalel tells Enoch that that wasn't a dream, but it was a vision from heaven, and that basically the dream meant that the world was full of sin and that God was going to destroy the world with a flood. But Mahalalel told Enoch to pray that some good people make it out alive. Enoch obeys, he prays, he also writes down his prayer, that way future generations can read it later, or later on, you know how that works, so write it down, other people can read it when you're gone. It then describes that Enoch kind of like goes outside and just starts to observe stuff. He saw that the sun, the moon, and the stars were under God's control, and that everything was, including chaos. Enoch then praises God for creating light and order in a place where judgment was about to happen, or where judgment was to come. In my personal opinion, I feel like this is a really good part of the book of Enoch, because here you have Enoch is like heavily distressed that the world is basically going to end, right? So he goes outside, and instead of like freaking out, he just looks at everything and he's like, okay. Everything's okay. Chaos will only happen if God allows it to, you know? And I feel like that's a very comforting to the reader, you know, to the listener. Someone who's like, oh, everything is going to be okay. Well, in this scenario or circumstance, it's not. The world is going to end, but you get what I'm trying to say. It then describes that Enoch blesses and praises God for the mouth and his tongue, with his mouth and tongue, tools that God gave him for speech. Or tools God gave humans for speech, yeah, pretty much. He praises God saying stuff like, Holy great King of everything, Holy great King of everything, ruler of heaven and earth forever, all-powerful, wise, and all-seeing. Enoch then talks about the problem, so he says angels have sinned, and that humans were punished because of their own sins, and that he feared a total destruction of people. Enoch then asks God to not only destroy... Oh, wait, yeah, he did say that. He then asks God to only destroy the wicked, to preserve the righteous, and to not command, is that even a word? To not abandon humanity completely. Enoch then has another vision / dream, and he tells this dream to his son Methuselah. And mind you, the next coming chapters is literally just talking about Adam and Eve and the Book of Watchers, or the Watchers. So how like the angels came down and they sinned with women and they had children. It's literally just talking about that, but they're animals. You're gonna see a lot more of this here in a second. But Adam is a bull. Eve is a heifer, which is like a female cow. Cain is like a black bull. Abel is a red bull. Yeah. Mind you, Enoch, from what I can gather anyway, he's like seeing this vision, but this is going to sound silly, but I think he's seeing them in the form of animals, because that's what it's saying. And it says that Enoch is described, somewhere in the midst of this, that he is described as looking up, and he sees heavenly beings that are described as looking like white men. When it says white men, I don't think it means like the color of their skin. I think it literally means like the color white, like light. You know how like light from the sun kind of flashes at you, just like. It says that there were 7 in total heavenly beings that was looking, or Enoch was like looking up at them, that there were 7 heavenly beings, 4 came down, and then another 3 came down later. The last 3 are described as grabbing Enoch and taking him to a high place above the world. Enoch is then described as seeing a huge tower rising above the land, higher than all hills. One of the heavenly beings tells him, "Stay here and watch what happens to the elephants, camels, donkeys, stars, and oxen." Mind you, these elephants, camels, donkeys, stars, and oxen are representing characters of the Watcher timeline, or basically how, when it told us like the Book of Watchers, or like basically like how angels came down, had a bunch of intercourse with women, and had Nephilim. Basically, it's just talking about that. It's just using animalistic symbolism. So, like, one of the 4 main angels, like the holy ones, grabs the first star, the one that fell from heaven. He then ties it up by its hands and feet and throws it into a dark, deep pit, a horrible abyss. The star represents the first fallen angel who started the rebellion. It's either Semyaza, or however you say him. I've noticed that a lot of people call him different stuff, but this calls him Semyaza. Another angel hands swords to the camels, donkeys, and elephants. Mind you, these are like symbolistic representations of the offspring of the fallen angels and the human women. Now, this next part, I debated strongly with myself on whether or not I should tell you this next part, but I am not kidding when I say this. Previously and now. It is literally Genesis to when the Israelites returned from the Babylonian exile. It's literally just that. It's so Genesis when they left Babylonian exile to rebuild the temple. It's from that to that, but they're animals. They're literally just animals. I'm not kidding. Noah is a bull. Abraham is like a white bull. What else? Moses is a sheep. David is a ram. Now, do I really have to tell you this? It's literally just Genesis to the return of the Babylonian exile, but they're animals. Listen, and I know what someone's going to say. Oh, you just don't want to tell us what happens from Genesis to the return of the Babylonian exiles. You can't try that with me, because I've explained the entire Bible. If you want to know what happens from Genesis to the return of the Babylonian exile, just go watch that series and picture them as animals. Okay, in this chapter, to keep it simple, it's about evil rulers and empires kept hurting God's people. A chosen leader, the Messiah, came with power to save them. God judged the wicked, angels, rulers, and sinners, all burned in fire. God tore down the old world and built a perfect new one. Everyone in it was pure, glowing, and at peace. Enoch saw the end of the world, the new heaven, and cried because it was so real. Mind you, this is very dumbed down because it's very like, it's like this. It's literally just that. I don't want to say it's exaggerated, but it kind of feels like that. Okay, it's daytime now. Don't question it. I am tired. So Enoch, mind you, this is just going to be a summary of the next coming chapters, or like the 10 chapters that I'm about to tell you right now. It's just a summary. I'm about to explain why later. So Enoch gathers his descendants to deliver a prophecy. The main message is live righteously, honest, single heart, and avoid deceitful people, as righteousness offers guidance and protection. There's future warning, judgment results, and then Enoch leaves his descendants a final testament of wisdom, message of hope, promise for the righteous, power, walk forever in divine light, the end of evil, so sin will vanish forever, perish in darkness, and never be seen again for all eternity. Enoch reveals a timeline of human history and judgment from the heavenly books. So the first week traces humanity or history from purity, first to wickedness, second to the flood, and to the third is covenant, the law, fourth, the temple, fifth, and final corruption and destruction, sixth. The seventh week is marked by a fully wicked generation, but the elect righteous gain divine wisdom. The conclusion is Enoch reminds that humans cannot fully comprehend God's power. This section continues the prophecy of the weeks that we're talking about. So the 8th week is justice and restoration for the righteous. The 9th week is evil is completely erased and the world is prepared for destruction. The 10th week is the final judgment occurs, leading to a new heaven and eternal light afterward, endless perfection, free from evil, sin, or corruption. So a direct call to action and a warning to the wicked, guidance, warning to sinners, assurance to or for the righteous, irreversible curses, woes, contrast to fates, wealth and exposure, focuses on the fate of wealthy and wicked, woe to the deceitful and idolaters, warnings, idolatry, salvation, accept wisdom, judgment on families, persecution, societal collapse, final assurance, final cataclysm and judgment, widespread violence, God's execution, protection for the righteous, and cosmic testimony. Now, what I just read to you is basically 10 chapters or 11 or 12 chapters summed up. So when I read it, it was very long and exaggerated, and I kind of just felt like I was reading the same thing. So I thought, you guys wouldn't want me to kind of just like sound like I'm repeating the same stuff, but that is the grand summary or premise of what it was talking about. Okay, we got 8 chapters left, but yeah. Thank you for watching the video. Let this be a little pause. Yeah. Okay, nighttime now. Back to nighttime. Back to nighttime. Enoch then tells the people to look up at heaven and God's works and fear him. Enoch then goes on to say that God can shut the sky, stop rain, and also stop dew, so sinners cannot escape the consequences. It then describes that God won't listen to the arrogant who spoke against his righteousness. It then describes that sailors were afraid of the sea because the sea, water, ocean, sea, could kill them and take everything that they owned. It then says that the sea obeyed God and everything in the sea was under God's control. It then describes that sinners feared the sea, but they did not fear the one who controlled it, which is God. It then describes that when God sends down fire and judgment, sinners will have no place to run or hide. It then describes that the stars, the earth, and the angels will tremble at God's power, and that sinners will be cursed forever with no peace. It then describes that the righteous, even though they died suffering, they should not fear death because their hope is in the final judgment. And that the sinners would mock the righteous, saying that they died the same and that they gained nothing. It then says that the sinners will live in greed and wickedness, but the righteous would die without corruption or evil. It then describes that when the righteous died, it was in their favor. Also, the judgment or final judgment, judgment day, whatever you want to call it, was also in their favor. Enoch swears that he has read the heavenly tablets and he knows the truth about the righteous. It then describes that joy, glory, and reward are waiting for the righteous who died. So, it describes that the righteous who died will live and never be forgotten, and that sinners who died in comfort will face the misery and Sheol, and that their souls will end up in darkness, chains, and burning judgment with no peace, and that the righteous shouldn't say their suffering means they're abandoned. God has seen it all. They were oppressed, abused, enslaved, and ignored when they cried for help, and that wicked rulers protected the oppressors and hid their crimes. But none of this cancels the coming judgment where the righteous are repaid and sinners crushed. It then describes that the angels remember the righteous and that their names are written before God. It then describes that the righteous who suffered will shine like heavenly lights and they will enter the heavenly gates. And then it describes that their cries for judgment will be answered and that their oppressors will be punished. and that the righteous will not, or will not, or will have, I'm very tired. Or that the righteous will not have to hide on judgment day because they will not be condemned. And it then says not to be afraid of or when the sinners prosper because you belong to the heavenly hosts, and that sinners think that their actions are not recorded but their sins are written down, and that light, darkness, day and night witnessed the actions of all. It then says not to twist God's words or follow idols because lying and perversion can only lead to sin. And that you're not, or Enoch then says that sinners will distort the truth and they will write deceitful books. Another mystery is that the true books will be given to the righteous. God then tells his heavenly messengers to deliver wisdom to humanity. They are described, or that they are appointed as overseers of earth. God then says that he and his son, who do you think that is? That's Lord Jesus! But he says that he and his son will stay united with the righteous forever, and that the righteous will have peace. The final message is rejoice, children of righteousness. It then describes that Lamech, Noah's dad, gives birth, or no, not him, what? His wife gives birth to a glowing baby that looks nothing like a human. It then describes that the baby was both black and white, and that it had blazing eyes that was very like, you know how blazing eyes work. And, what else? Its hair was white as wool, and it lit up the whole house. Or blazing eyes. They were very bright. The reason why I say blazing is because in my head, blazing is, assigned with light. So whenever I think of, like, light, I think of, like, blazing. The newborn is described as talking and blessing God. Lamech, his dad, upon hearing this, is terrified. Because, let's be real, if a baby came out looking really glorious and holy and then started talking when it was stillborn, I feel like you would be terrified too. Lamech begins to think that the baby is not from him, but it is from one of the angels. Methuselah then goes to Enoch to ask him what is going on. Enoch then told Methuselah that angels sinned with women, and because of this, God was going to flood the earth, or the world. Worldwide flood, you get the idea. Enoch then goes on to say that this baby is actually Lamech's, and he is to name this baby Noah, and that Noah and his sons will survive the upcoming destruction of the world, or the coming destruction of the world. And that he will survive while the rest of humanity dies. Also, just so people are not confused, Lamech, Methuselah, and Enoch are all related. Lamech has a dad, his name is Methuselah. Methuselah has a son, Lamech. And Lamech is the grandson to Enoch, or Enoch is the grandfather to Lamech. Methuselah is also Enoch's son too. Lamech has a son. He does have a son, but Enoch has a son. His name is Methuselah. Methuselah also has a son. His name is Lamech. Lamech has a dad. His name is Methuselah. Methuselah has a dad. His name is Enoch. You get the idea. Enoch says that generations will keep on sinning until a righteous generation will happen, and sin will be removed. Enoch then tells Methuselah to tell Lamech, or kind of confirm to Lamech that that was actually his son. Methuselah then relayed the message, or informed this to Lamech, to name the boy Noah, or that the boy is named Noah. During or the coming destruction, Noah will be a comfort to the earth when the earth is destroyed. Enoch then writes for Methuselah and future generations who keep the law. It then describes that the wicked will be punished and their names will be blotted from the book of life, and that their spirits will be slain and they will be thrown into a fiery, chaotic place. Enoch then sees a blaze or lamination where the sinners will be put or punished. The angels then described that this is where the spirits will be put for perverting God's word and committing evil. It then describes that the righteous who rejected worldly gain will be rewarded. It then describes that the righteous will be seated on thrones of glory, while the wicked will be in the darkness and cry aloud. And the faithful will see the difference between themselves and basically they'll see the difference between themselves and the punished wicked. And that's it! And that was the Book of Enoch. Kinda. You want to hear something crazy, pumpkin cakes? That's not it. There's multiple books of Enoch. Well, not multiple. Multiple in the sense of there's more than one. There's, well, two or three more. There's two more books. There's two books. This is First Enoch. This is, yeah, First Enoch. There's also Second Enoch and Third Enoch. Will I do those books? No. Oh, well, maybe. It'll, depends. Maybe if this video gets a insane amount of support, I might think about doing a second video on Second Enoch or Third Enoch. Now, while I'm here, I kind of just want to explain a couple things. So, you'll notice at the beginning of the video, I will start talking at the camera, and then I'll slowly start moving my face down here, and then I'll start reading something to you. That's because the Book of Enoch isn't really a story-driven book the way you would think the Hebrew Bible is, or just the Bible all around, canon. The way you would think about how Christian or biblical canon stories are told, so like the Exodus with Moses, David and Goliath, Jesus Christ, the greatest story ever told. The stories about the judges, so like Samson, Gideon, like Prophet Elijah, Prophet Jeremiah. You guys get what I'm trying to say. Basically, what the Book of Enoch will do, or at least the first book anyway, the one we covered right now, is it will give a little lore, and then it will give a long, prolonged dialogue about a certain subject, or thing, whatever. Basically, it gives a long, prolonged dialogue about the wicked, the righteous, and it kind of just runs with that. The Book of Enoch, I don't want to say it's long and exaggerated, but it really feels like that when you're reading it anyway. I'm sure you can sit behind here and be like, that really wasn't. For me, it was, because I had to read the book and then I had to tell it to you guys. Mind you, I just want to go ahead and say this so it sticks. This book is not canonical, meaning it did not happen. The only reason why the Book of Enoch is as big as it is because of the themes from this book. So to give you some examples, angels coming down, sinning with women, having children, Nephilim, and that story alone has kind of like got into like, it was so interesting to a point to where they took it and it kind of developed into like cinema and movies. Enoch seeing heaven and hell, the talk of the Son of Man, aka Jesus. The way Enoch speaks on behalf of the Watchers, that stuff was, from a certain perspective, was very interesting, and it made its way into cinema and movies. Even though the book of First Enoch is a cool read, don't let it touch your heart as a Christian, because this didn't even happen, from what we can gather anyway. It'd be like me telling you the story of Hansel and Gretel. It's a cool story, it just didn't happen. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, what if you got something wrong? If I did get something wrong, which I hope I didn't, it'd be the equivalent of me telling you SpongeBob lore. Like, it's not a big deal. But, of course, I did try my absolute best to give you an accurate video on the Book of Enoch. This is probably going to be my longest video on my YouTube channel. It's probably going to be like 2 hours. But listen, if you made it this far, comment blueberry pancake. That seems good. Yeah, comment blueberry pancake. But yeah, if you liked the video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because these videos actually take a really long time to make, and you'd be doing me the biggest favor if you actually did do those things. But yeah, that was the book of First Enoch. Whoa. Thank you for all your support. But yeah, I feel like that's about it. I thank you, I love you, and God bless.